Hello, I'm Anjali Thomas, and I'm here with poet and journalist Abhimanyu Kumar and Dutch historian and journalist Aletta André. And we are here to launch their book, The House of Awadh, a hidden tragedy, published by HarperCollins. Now, in 1975, just for a bit of background for the viewer, in 1975, this woman with a very commanding presence arrives at New Delhi railway station with two of her children, and she claims that they are all descendants of the House of Awadh. What followed was 10 years of them living in the station with a brief visit to Lucknow. They were mocked, they were derided, they were shunted, they rejected offers of help. And finally, they were just, given this derelict lodge in Delhi Ridge Forest, which is now called Malcha Mahal. There they lived in isolation, without water, without electricity, and the subject of scrutiny, which further led to their dehumanization. Now, Aletta and Abhimanyu, they tried to separate truth from lies, fact from fiction, and follow Wilayat through her life of movement and displacement. So, thank you for joining us. And
Thank you for having us.
And why did
Thank
you all
you.
decide to choose to write about Wilayat? I mean, what was your intention when you started out?
Abhi, you want to start?
Okay. Other than the fascinating aspects of Wilayat's character, her worldview, her strange dictums, like the desire to be photographed on moonlight, all of which was interesting, but at one level superficial as well. And both Aletta and I wanted to understand what made her tick, what were her hopes, and what sorrows she underwent in her life to arrive where she was at in the end. So, to understand her was a primary motive for me.
Yeah, same. And Abhimanyu introduced me to the story. That was when he was working for a weekly newspaper at the time, and he took me to see Malcha Mahal at the time when the family was still living there. I mean, Wilayat had passed away by then. Aletta was living there, and there was a rumor that Sakina had died at the time. This was in 2015. So that was the first I heard of it. And so I had to still read up about, everything that had already been written about them and about the House of Awadh and the annexation and the whole history there. So it was a slow process to understand the full context. And even after we already decided to write the book, it was that we really, came to know the full scope of the story that was behind the facade of the royals. Yeah.
And was the moment that you decided that there's this part when you walk through this mahal after the family is no longer there, and you see this little note with numbers, and then you'll start calling up, and most of the numbers are disconnected or the people don't live there anymore. But you did get a person who helped them for a large part of their lives, from the station to their house. So was that when you said that you decided to go ahead with writing this book, or was it something you were always going to do, and just push through?
I think the idea for the book shaped around the same time. Yeah, it has been a bit of a process. Yes, initially what came out of finding that number was, chasing him for about 6 months. And then what came out of it was an article, and around the time there was also the idea for a book, but how the book would exactly look like, that kind of shaped up after speaking to him, and not only based on that, but I don't know, it's hard to trace. It kind of happened at the same time. Abhi?
Oh,
yeah.
This is a question for Abhimanyu. You've written about this family in the past, as a journalist. And once you finish this book and you finish this endeavor, this history, this investigative piece of journalism, did your opinion of her change? Did your view of her change? Did you set out thinking she was something like this, a different person? Did that change towards the end as you uncovered the final layer of who she was?
My opinion of her didn't change. I knew that she was an independent, feisty person, defiant. Her defiance impressed me as well towards authorities because it was just a very hard thing to do. And people forget that she was a mother to two children whose lives were completely dependent on her. So, as well as the fact that she had to survive in very difficult circumstances. My opinion didn't change. In fact, my respect for her increased after I learned that she was quite active in the Kashmir movement, regardless of whether it was aligned to my political ideology or not. But her activism and her sense of uh, justice in that case impressed me. It also impressed me that she was involved in uh, the movement for more freedom and rights for women in Pakistan, which is not so talked about, but it was quite an important part of their
Yeah.
history in the initial years of their independence as well, in which the first prime minister's wife was involved, Rana Liaquat Ali Khan, who was from India, in fact, she was from India. Sorry. So, yeah, my respect actually increased for her.
And displacement is a motive that travels through this book. Here was a woman who lived in under the Raj, then moved after partition to Karachi, came back to Kashmir, Lucknow, Delhi, Srinagar, I mean all over. Roots. I mean, was that something that you felt? And you all traveled, you all followed her path. Could you shed some insight into that? You've traveled all over. You've kind of ferreted out people to talk to. Must have had the phone slammed down on you all multiple times.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it did
Yeah, and
happen.
it kind of went backwards. Like we only managed to find out some real new information about her life in Pakistan towards the end of our investigation, and it also comes towards the end of the book because we kind of follow the order in which we investigated to write it down also. Um, and yeah, and we came to realize that it was likely not her choice to move to Pakistan from Lucknow. But then, while she was there, she fully emerged into the nation building and her position as a woman, as a political activist there. And it went wrong, and then she went back to what kind of came before that, which was Kashmir, and yes, we found a lot of people who knew them there as well, and that again painted another picture of the person she was when she was there, and there it also went wrong, and she started really searching for a place where she would be welcomed and belong, and I think that's why she started to kind of grasp back to that history of Awadh, which was also in her past, but through through her ancestry.
So, taking off from that point of from our ancestry, you'll say somewhere in the book, I didn't make a notation of it, that maybe she was not perhaps the descendant of Hazrat, but another wife, one of the other wives, right? If I'm not mistaken. But she chose Hazrat. She identified with this woman who was the face of the 1857 war, who rallied soldiers. She identified with this woman. What does that say about her? She chose her ancestor in a way. Is that correct?
That's quite, I mean, the heart of the matter in one way, because most of the previous discourse has been centered around that. We would say that we leave enough scope in the book for anybody to see whether she chose her ancestor, under what circumstances, because from what we heard from the family, a narrative comes out, as you said, like she could have been from a descendant from another wife of Wajid Ali Shah. But the thing with Hazrat Mal's story is that there is enough loophole there, considering all the historical circumstances, that we just can't say ultimately whether that is also completely untrue. I would stick my neck out and say that.
Yeah.
So there is
But
that
she did mention,
possibility. Mm.
she did write a lot about Hassan Mahal, talk a lot about Hassan Mahal. It also passed on to Sakina, her daughter, who wrote a book in which Hassan Mahal plays a major role, as well as the Begums of Awadh that came before that. So be it Hassan Mahal or be it the other Begums, they do identify a lot with the strong women of history, and their suffering, and their the injustice done upon them, and they make a link to what happened in their own lives. So that identification with that goes very strong.
And also because Hazrat Mahal, if I may, or please.
No, no, carry on, please. Sorry.
Okay, so no worries. Because Hazrat Mahal also underwent circumstances which were quite similar to Wilayat, in the sense that she gets separated from her husband. She is also uh, fighting against the authorities, the British, and she also ultimately lived and died in exile. I'm just saying, out of all the other Begums of Awadh, Hazrat Mahal also provided a kind of prototype or a template for her in that way, and probably in that sense, the identification was too intense. But that's for psychiatrists to decide, or I mean, that's not we cannot say. We have left it open, I think. There.
Yeah. And you do link it to trauma and all, but there were so many sides to Wilayat, not your accounts, but accounts that people have told you. So she was the good neighbor. She was the neighbor who'd give sweet rice during, as festivals. She was the person who taught somebody how to, in Lucknow, I think, to raise dogs, to train dogs. Yet she was 40, yet she was rude. Some of the men in power would always leave saying that she was rude to us. She spoke to us like we were nobody. The common people, the people that she lived with, said that the children played with them, they played cricket, the family was polite. There was also this, at the same time, she could have had left leanings. And then, you address that in the chapter Transformations, where, left leanings, her husband may or may not have been involved in a plot to assassinate Liaquat Ali Khan, the prime minister of Pakistan at that time. So there are so many facets to her life that sometimes I feel that, did you ever feel frustrated? I mean, could you answer that? And also, do you ever feel frustrated when you think like, aha, this is who she is, and then somebody would tell you something else, and that would just, everything would unravel again.
Hmm. Yeah, that's why also the chapter is called Transformation in a way, because like a person can lead many lives, and a person can change in the course of their life, and a person can be I don't know, frustrated or disappointed with a certain path they chose or were forced to choose, and then it didn't work out, so they go for another path. And the way different people perceive her, like some as being sweet and respectful, and others perceive her as rude. Also, we felt like maybe also said something to the people who doing the perceiving. As you say, it was often the men in power who thought she was rude. So again, like when she was maybe frustrated and tried to assert herself as someone who deserves to be heard, and was not in many occasions in her life. So yeah, I think, I mean, not everyone has so many faces as she, but a person can have many, can live many lives, um, and I think all of them are true in her case. I don't know. What do you think, Abhi?
Yeah, I think all of them are true. And what also fascinates me is the trajectory, because initially we ourselves found out that she was closer to the left-leaning intelligentsia of Pakistan, and then she turns into a royalist, bit of a royalist. So yeah, that transformation is amazing, and I don't know if it's a kind of revanchist attitude in the face of what she perceives as oppression by modern democratic states. Because they did cause a lot of suffering in their wake as well. There was some oppression also of people who are not fitting into. the contours of the politics drawn at that time, or the land itself in that great period of division, partition, as we call it. So I think her attitudes to different periods of time also give us an idea of how things were.
Yeah, and I think that that's something that came across in the book, is that you'll address this mistake we make when we build characters, especially when we're trying to identify women. They're either angel of the house, the person to be revered, or in her case, the mad woman in the attic. We can't be both. And we and I say we, not just the politicians, not just history, but I think that as journalists also, in the media, we try to typecast them instead of just accepting them for who they are. But going back in earlier in the book, there was this scene, I should have marked it out, where Sakina, a year after Wilayat's death, Sakina, I don't know how old she could be because there's some confusion about their ages, but she was definitely 56, must be in her 40s, I don't know. But anyway, there's so much melancholy, and that her brother couldn't live with it. A year after the death, he goes and cremates the body, and there's this very powerful scene where Sakina is standing and he's wanting to rush into the fire, and he's holding her, and you've taken that from her notes, and she says, "I want to be with Princess." I think I want to be with Princess because that's what they called their mother. What was going on when you discovered those notes? You were given a copy of her book, and when you read all this, what did you all think at that point when you read this for the first time?
Well, you read it before me, Abhi. But
Yeah, I read it before you because you were busy with the other
and
work
a
that
slow
you do,
reader,
the important
apparently.
journalistic work. So I did read it. It was an amazing scene. Amazing doesn't really capture it. In fact, it's frightening. It's powerful. It's grotesque as well, and it's all mixed up. There is blood. There is violence. There is tenderness. There's all kinds of things going on there. It's like almost a culmination of all their suffering. Till that point, actually, the book that she wrote is entirely about Vilayat and about that day. It could be called. She keeps calling it the Black Friday, and that central motive really it's like a loop, and everything goes around that. The mother was really the sun around which they orbited, like small planet.
Yeah. But we are drawn to the grotesque. It is human nature. Even as I read the book, I would go back to the parts of what they did when their mother passed away, and you go back to imagining their lives of these two children. And do you feel a sense of sorrow for them because they could have been so much more? They could have led their lives. There were what do you call sparks of it. She was a pre-med student. Sakina, the sister, was a pre-med student. He loved cricket. He went to London, England. And instead, because of Wilayat, they were isolated more and more, and then she drew them into her world. Do
Yeah.
you think she did them a disservice? I mean, should we expect more from her?
And that's a good question.
Yeah. No, it is really, I mean, about that scene also, it's incredibly sad, and it really like forces you to almost feel that they were, they were what we keep saying in our book and our interviews also. They were human beings with such strong feelings, and this was really sad. And I think a lot of people who were given Sakina's book, we never read anything about the book except 2 lines saying, "Oh, it's unreadable." And I have the feeling that a lot of people didn't make it to this scene because it's towards the end of the book, and it's just, it is so strong. In fact, after the book went to print, I met a woman, so that could not be included in the book, but she met Ali Raza in the late 90s, so about 5 years after their mother passed away. And they built a intimate friendship. She took him out to see art galleries. He visited her house. She visited there also. He even met her brother, and they talked about him possibly still at that point doing something with his life, maybe receive guests in the Mahal to kind of make some money out of it, because they had money to start with, but it was finishing towards the end of their life. And it didn't work out. She tried very hard. Ultimately, she had to leave the country, and he wanted to come with her, and she decided against it because he was just too depending on her. It was not. He still had a wish to kind of come out of it, but he couldn't. And is it fully a disservice of Wilayat, or is it also the society that that just had rejected them so fully that nobody, after a certain point, nobody really tried to engage with them to the level that this lady did, for example?
Yeah, if I may add, is that we can see in Kashmir, for example, how ardently they are trying to build a new life with a lot of
Yeah.
commitment towards their surroundings, the community. She's also she engages in her pastimes like swimming. As you said, she was a good neighbor, and also when they reach Srinagar, there also initially the children are studying, they have friends. Among the Shia community, she's participating in Muharram, and so she had certainly a commitment towards the children. But I think circumstances completely overtook her because she became she was nobody in the great game of India, Pakistan, and Kashmir that was being played. How politics was shifting, and her dreams were dashed. She was already a persona non grata in Pakistan for taking on a very powerful man for very strong political, as well as, if you read you have uh,
Yeah.
astutely as you have read the book, there are other reasons as well. And she is suffering from the trauma of that and her husband's mysterious death. And so
Yeah.
how much agency are we also leaving her with? I mean, the government actually gave her a small pension. If you see, I mean, if I may just note that it was for being a descendant of Hazrat Mahal. So yes, the government needs to answer some questions. Maybe we also need to make it a bit uh, obvious or clear that there are some answers that the government has. We have raised them that the government can answer. But yeah, so with that small amount, with all doors closing in, Indira Gandhi, Privy Purse, emergency, I mean, you leave a person with no maneuver to make.
There were also what she ultimately said was what the reason was for leaving Kashmir was that the rumors of their involvement in the assassination of Liaquat Ali Khan were made life impossible there, and we know that the children were confronted with those rumors in school and they suffered from it. We
Yeah.
were told by former classmates, and and they were very there were a lot of suspicions, like towards people coming from Pakistan, like why were they allowed, and what's their passport, what's their alliance, so life must have been hard for her there. And then she went to Lucknow, and again she didn't find the welcome she was hoping for. So yeah, it was kind of a slow descent from what we have been able to trace. And and the woman being responsible for her children, yes, but also I feel society and history, bear some responsibility.
Yeah, because from the time she comes onto the station, when she is already at the edge of the town, as we write also in a symbolic sense, she is already kind of getting cut off. And so Kashmir was the last ditch effort that she made at reinstating some of her previous life back and to give something, make something, make a future with her children. But she's already at the edge of the city, cast off at the station, which is her kind of last gambit. And then Malcha Mahal, I see it as a kind of cast away completely. Like, it's a purgatory. You are there, but you are not really there. You have been hidden away, and your existence is just a rumor. And
But
yeah,
she did reject some of the offerings that were given by the Lucknow, by the UP government, in the sense that they offered her a place to stay. She said no.
That's true.
It was too
Yeah, but
suburban for her. I think that it was too suburban. I think that was the word you all used. I mean, she's a
that's what we
she.
got from Amar Rizvi. But we
Hmm.
don't know exactly what Vilayat, and I think considering the Shia Sunni politics there, she was being used there as well as a political pawn, and
Yeah.
she may have sensed it, and she
Hmm.
But
may
it
not
is
have wanted
true.
to be a part of it.
Yeah, it is true. There's also some paper, some notes from their archive that in which this was said that a certain address was offered. So um, yeah, we can also say that maybe some bad decisions were made and life could have been different. Yeah,
That could be said for all of us
yeah, mm,
uh, in terms of decisions.
yeah.
But,
She was certainly stubborn. She was a pride woman. She was stubborn. Yeah,
and you reiterate multiple times. Before that, the question, one thing that keeps coming up is this carpets. Just as I mean, displacement is something that follows her through her life. The carpets everywhere. People spoke about the carpets. Whether it was in everything, and it would suddenly pop up. She had magnificent carpets, and then the carpets got burned. Somebody, I think, in luck when there was a fire, and some of the carpets got burned. Some of it got stolen. And then when you all visit the house, the Mahal, the first time, one of the visits, you could see some of the carpets, and the second time when you visited, even that's gone, right? And
mm,
this got me thinking that she obviously comes from a very elite family. She speaks English very well. I mean, she wrote coherently or incoherently, but it was grammatically correct to a large
More or
extent,
less, for
more or
sure,
less.
yeah,
for sure.
She communicated with leaders. She had access to leaders in Pakistan and in India. She knew people. So she was obviously an elite, wealthy family. She came from an elite, wealthy family. How much
for sure.
access she had to it is another thing. But she did. She was somebody.
For sure. Yeah.
That's the
No,
fact.
yeah.
She was
No,
not a. She may have
no, no,
died.
no, for sure, and that's what also, yeah, and that status didn't necessarily come from ancestry related to Awadh. I mean, she was married into a family. She, someone who rose in the bureaucracy and who also, that was likely also a motivation for moving to Pakistan to get, a higher position within the bureaucracy. And when she was in Pakistan, she was very much part of, like what we said before, from the women's movement. She was part of several organizations. Her name was mentioned in the newspaper. She was attending events that were attended by the prime ministers and the prime minister's wife as well. So definitely, and they were allocated a house which was near to them. Yeah, and so definitely she was part of a very small elite in Karachi at the time, and even in Lucknow before independence as well. They were hanging out at that time also with some of the many family many members that the erstwhile royal family has there, but they were in those circles for sure.
Um, you reiterate now multiple times in the story, in the beginning, even at the end, that her story is our story. You foregrounded her personal history with the backdrop of India's history, from the Raj to the partition to independence to partition to emergency to where we are now, the communal divide, the derelict, some monuments not getting, Muslim monuments not getting the attention and the care they need. What made you all decide to do that? Because at the end of the day, she was a woman who was isolated from this, and you all say that she's isolated from liberalization. The world has changed, but life in that lodge continued. But you foregrounded her in all these epic events.
It's like, if I may, I will try. Uh, it, yeah, um, I mean, there is a quote by the French philosopher Gilles Deleuze that we actually like somebody, really love them when we see their unhinged side. If we do not say it, but once we accept that, that's when we kind of begin to love someone, not by their obvious charms. So Vilayat is that unhinged side of that entire history of the subcontinent. She's the aberration in the heart of this uniform narrative that we are told of freedom movement, of what happened with the British. And it's just that's what makes it amazing, regardless of she just came to embody that faith. And
and
so I
that
don't know.
and that's what also makes the book so amazing, because it's also so much of India's history, whether it was
Yes,
Awadh, whether it was Hastings. It's more than just her. Your book is so much more than just her. It's also where we are now. And that was a bit, I'm assuming that was something that you all kept working on towards when writing this.
it came naturally. You see, even when she comes, and just now it was going on the story of a Pakistani woman, Seema, who came and fell in love with somebody. And it was being played in the most garish and tacky way on the television, and her life was being presented as a spectacle and social media memes and all kinds of things. But Vilayat was in that position, and you can see, like, she came also, and the politics was totally different then. As you can see in the book, in Kashmir, Atal Bihari Vajpayee and others were already kind of talking about why Muslim women should not be settled, and the whole NRC debate that took place later on, the protest. It's already the germs of everything were being laid. And through that, I just wanted to complete that idea, is that too, you can sometimes, in literature, a character is most manifestly expressed when they do something out of character a little bit. Otherwise they become cardboard characters. To see their entire being, it is these aberrations that actually tell us what the truth is, the contradictions. She embodied that contradiction also in this entire process of nation building, and it is through that prism that you see the contradictions and aberrations that make it what it is, because every narrative has holes. Actually, there is no narrative without a hole. You have to let go of the holes to create any narrative. If you keep all the holes, there will be no narrative. So everything that we hear, everything that we say, all discourse, all our ideas about ourselves, everything is already punctured. So, so it's just that her story has obvious punctures, but it is through those punctures that the light comes in, through those gaps, that you
That's
see.
not Cohen song.
Yeah,
In the
yeah,
cracks to let the light come in.
yeah.
Uh, one last question. I have so many, but there's just one question. And this was a conversation you and I were having. On there's a lot of kindness towards her in your book, and you pull up journalists, especially a New York Times piece that was written by Ellen Barry, and I put it down where you say that as journalism is supposed to speak truth to power, but what was done in the NYT piece, which was when a lot of people started looking into that family, was humiliating the powerless. And you're critical of India TV, of NYT, of or the way people approach them. So I would like to go back to this thing of empathy, lack of prejudice when you write, and how did you all do it? It's so easy to be drawn to the grotesque, to write them off. And you think that the media did a disservice to this family?
Yeah, in a way. I mean, we give credit to the NYT piece for some reporting and finding sources, and some pointing out some facts that had been snowed under. But at some point, it's literally written that the writer feels offended when people lie to journalists. So we go a bit more into understanding what is a lie, and a lot of it also has to do with motivation. If a lie, there's several forms of lies, and intention is important there. And when we talk about if they were lying or delusional, and delusionals also have motives, and delusions always have a kernel of truth. And at the end of the day, um, you can portray someone as, or someone maybe a bit out of the mainstream, but what we considered as is that she's telling a story, and there is something about that story, and some of the details of the story might not correspond with facts, but there still might be truth in it, in a different way. So we really wanted to look differently at the concepts of uh, truth and lies. What is a lie at the end of the day?
I would just like to add that I think it's a bit strong to say that we pulled up any journalist for sure. We didn't.
All right.
No, I mean we are journalists ourselves, but
You are critical of the way the media,
we
and
are.
not just YTPs. You all went through archives, so whether it was multiple papers, the way India TV tackled it, the way they were hounded, for the grotesqueness of their lives. So you are critical of
Yeah, we are
the.
critical for sure. For sure, we are critical because, but I don't know if the media intentionally did a disservice. It's just the way the discourse was shaped. We have tried to understand it, how it kind of shifted also a little bit. Initially, Aletta, when they came, they were quite simple, like, they were not really dismissive, like Promila Kalan's article in
Yeah, no, I mean,
1975.
Pramila Cullen was very factual, and we quote that article, even though it was really a short brief. If you look at it in the newspaper, we quote it at several occasions in the book because it was really remarkable in, like, the way it was reported. Just one, but also international media initially also gave more attention to really kind of going into the history of Awadh and what she was telling about that, and whether it was just or unjust, etc., kind of listening to that argument. But it did change, and it became kind of a hunt for, is it true or lie? And that's not the story we felt. That's why when we started writing the book, we didn't know what we would find in terms of facts or extra archive material or witness reports. But we thought true or lie, that we thought that's not the story.
And I would just like to also clarify something quickly. For example, this matter of facts, I mean, there are certain facts in the world. For example, what we learn, if I may just say, in physics and mathematics, certainly the earth goes around the sun, and there are facts. We are not arguing for a post-truth world at all where there are no facts. There are some facts, but there are also many interpretations. When we
Hmm.
come in the social realm, non-scientific realm, where how we construct identities, how we construct the idea of a nation state, like itself, Benedict Anderson says it's an imagined community. So you see the fact basis of that is kind of not exactly as strong as it is in physics and mathematics, for example. So in the social realm, we have the scope to argue out a few things. So that we argue out. I am fully for facts. I'm a journalist, and they are my bread and butter. The other thing about kindness also relates to that. Problem with kindness is that it can lead to gullibility and believing something that even if you are sympathetic, you shouldn't be believing. Our job is to give you as close an approximation of truth as we understand it in a story like this. So, and when you said that thing about the kindness, I feel that, like, I mean, ultimately, I would like to do a thorough job as well and not present some overtly sentimental or gullible story about her. But
But
yes,
I think you did that. Sorry to cut you off, but you make that very clear in beyond the last paragraph of Beyond Truth and Lies. And I just opened it up. So you say that their adopted identity, served as a medium of protest against mainstream narratives of history and storytelling. So I think it's clear that this book is not saying believe what she's saying, and
thank you.
you address that in the book because you say that, but not every story worth remembering is found in archival records.
Yeah, that also I agree with, because archives are institutional memory, and institutions sometimes may not want to remember every inconvenient thing that causes their narrative to rupture or look a bit, you know, not as
Yeah,
appealing as it should be.
I
Yes.
enjoy
Thank
it.
you so much.
Meeting y'all.